The wheels of a freight train can weigh more than an entire car. So why don't trains just use disc brakes like every other vehicle on the road? Welcome to Simple Concepts Explained. Today we are pulling back the curtain on why something as massive as a train still doesn't use one of the simplest braking systems on Earth. At first glance, it feels like something that should already exist. Cars have disc brakes, motorbikes have disc brakes. Even aircraft use advanced braking systems when they land. So, when you look at something as massive and powerful as a modern train, it seems almost strange that the same simple solution isn't used in the same way. But trains don't just avoid disc brakes because of tradition or cost. They avoid them because rail braking is a completely different engineering problem, one that is defined less by stopping power alone and more by heat, friction, wheel design, and the physics of steel on steel contact. And once you understand what a train is actually doing when it slows down, the answer starts to make a lot more sense. To understand why trains don't rely on disc brakes, you first have to understand what they're working with in the first place. A modern freight train can weigh anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand tons. That mass is spread across hundreds of wheels, all connected through rigid steel axles running along steel rails. This creates one of the most efficient rolling systems ever invented, but also one of the hardest to stop, because steel on steel has an extremely low rolling resistance, which is great for efficiency, but terrible when you want rapid deceleration. Once a train is moving, it doesn't want to stop. It carries enormous kinetic energy, and that energy has to go somewhere when you apply the brakes. This is where things start to diverge from road vehicles. In a car, disc brakes clamp pads onto a rotor attached to each wheel. The friction is localized, controlled, and supported by rubber tires that already provide significant grip and heat absorption. Cars also have far more braking points relative to their mass, and the heat generated is relatively easy to manage. A train is a different scale entirely. If you tried to scale car-style disc brakes up to a freight train, you immediately run into a thermal problem. When you stop something that massive, the energy being converted into heat is extreme. And heat is the real enemy of braking systems, because brakes don't just need to stop a vehicle once, they need to stop it repeatedly, sometimes on long downhill gradients, sometimes under emergency conditions, sometimes while fully loaded. If a train relied only on wheel-mounted disc brakes, the system would very quickly reach temperatures high enough to cause warping of brake components, reduced friction efficiency, and, in extreme cases, thermal failure. And in rail transport, brake failure is not an acceptable failure mode. So instead, trains use a system that spreads braking force across multiple methods rather than concentrating it in one place. The most important of these is something called the air brake system, originally developed in the 19th century and still forming the backbone of train braking today. Instead of each wheel being independently controlled like in a car, the entire train is connected through a continuous air line. When pressure is reduced, brake cylinders along each carriage apply force to the wheels. This system is inherently safer because it is fail-safe by design. If the air pressure is lost, the brakes automatically apply. It also allows braking force to be distributed across the entire length of the train rather than concentrated at individual discs. But even with air brakes, trains still rely heavily on friction directly applied to the wheels themselves, not separate disc rotors. And this is where one of the key design reasons becomes important. The wheel-rail interface is already a braking surface. In many trains, brake shoes press directly against the wheel tread. This creates friction on a large diameter surface that is already designed to handle structural loads. It also helps keep the system mechanically simple and robust, which matters enormously when you're dealing with trains that may run for hundreds of kilometers without maintenance access. However, even this is not the full picture, because trains don't rely purely on friction braking at all. In fact, modern rail systems increasingly depend on non-contact braking methods that reduce wear and improve safety. One of the most important is dynamic braking, often used in electric and diesel-electric locomotives. In this system, the traction motors that normally drive the wheels are switched into generator mode. Instead of consuming electricity, they produce it. The kinetic energy of the train is converted into electrical energy, which is then dissipated as heat through resistor grids or, in some systems, fed back into the power supply. This means the train slows down without relying entirely on physical friction, and that dramatically reduces wear on any mechanical braking system. There is also regenerative braking, used in many modern electric rail networks where energy generated during braking is fed back into the overhead lines or third rail system, effectively recycling energy instead of wasting it as heat. When you combine all of these systems, something becomes clear. Trains don't lack braking power. They actually have multiple redundant braking systems working together. Disc brakes simply aren't necessary in most cases, and in some cases would actually make the system worse. Because if you did try to introduce disc brakes into a train system, you would run into several immediate engineering problems. The first is space. Rail wheels are compact, and adding large disc assemblies would complicate axle design significantly. Unlike cars, where each wheel is individually accessible, train axles are shared across multiple tons of load and must remain structurally simple and extremely durable. The second is maintenance. Disc brakes wear out. They require regular replacement, inspection, and cooling considerations. On a freight network where trains are constantly in motion across long distances, introducing high maintenance components at every wheel would dramatically increase downtime and operating cost. The third, and most important, is heat dissipation. Even ventilated high performance discs would struggle under sustained braking loads from a heavy train descending a long gradient. Rail systems need braking methods that can operate continuously without degradation, not just short bursts of high performance. This is why trains use a layered braking approach instead of a single system. Air brakes provide the primary mechanical force. Dynamic and regenerative braking handle the majority of energy conversion during normal operation. Friction-based systems act as backup and final stopping force when needed. And all of this works together to solve a problem that disc brakes alone cannot handle at scale: sustained, controlled deceleration of extreme mass over long distances. There is also another subtle reason trains avoid relying on disc brakes, and it comes down to something called unsprung mass. In rail engineering, keeping the weight of components directly attached to the wheel assemblies as low as possible improves stability and track wear. Adding large brake discs to every wheel increases unsprung mass significantly, which can lead to increased track stress and reduced smoothness at high speeds. So instead of adding complexity at the wheel, engineers moved braking systems elsewhere, into designs that interact with the wheels indirectly or use the motors themselves as braking devices. When you zoom out and look at the full system, it becomes clear that train braking is not a simplified version of car braking. It is a fundamentally different philosophy. Cars rely on high-friction, high-response braking at individual wheels. Trains rely on distributed, redundant, thermally managed systems that prioritize consistency over intensity. And that is why disc brakes never became the standard in rail transport. Not because engineers didn't think of it, not because trains are outdated, but because in the environment trains operate in, disc brakes solve a problem that railways already solved in a more effective way decades ago. So the next time you see a freight train slowly rolling through a station or a passenger train gliding to a stop, it might look like something simple is happening. But underneath that smooth deceleration is a carefully balanced system of air pressure, electrical resistance, and wheel-based friction working together in harmony. And in that system, disc brakes simply don't add anything that isn't already being done better, safer, and more efficiently by the engineering that came before them. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments what hidden industrial process you'd like us to explore next. And don't forget to subscribe to Simple Concepts Explained for more deep dives into the fascinating engineering, logistics, and systems quietly shaping our world. See you in the next one.